I want you to take a second and mentally audit your last 48 hours at work. Just be honest with yourself. How much of that time was spent actually thinking, solving a complex problem, strategizing, creating something new, and how much of it was spent just acting as a human router?
A human router. That is such a painful yet incredibly accurate image.
You know exactly what I mean, right? You open an email, you download a PDF, read some specific number off page 3.
Mm-hmm.
Then you open Excel, you paste that number into cell C4, save it, and then you have to email someone else just to say, okay, it's done.
It's the glue work,
Uh,
that's what they call it. It's this invisible labor that keeps businesses running. But let's be honest, it is absolute poison for productivity. It just drains the soul.
It really does. And for decades, the corporate answer to this was either, hire an intern or just stay late and get it done.
Mm-hmm.
But today, we are diving into a source that suggests the real answer is actually build a robot.
But to be clear, not a physical robot. We aren't talking about Terminators walking into the break room to get coffee.
No, we are doing a deep dive into learning Microsoft Power Automate by Paul Papanek-Stork. And this isn't just a technical manual. It's basically a manifesto for a completely new kind of employee.
It really is. And Stork is a heavy hitter in this space to guide us. He's the principal architect at a firm called Don't Panic Consulting.
Which, frankly, is arguably the best name in the entire industry. Don't panic. Solid advice for tech and for life.
It is. And he's been a Microsoft MVP for, over 16 consecutive years. So he has seen the bad old days of manual workflows. He's seen the clunky early attempts at automation. And this book is his guide to the current revolution, the rise of the citizen developer.
That phrase, citizen developer, it sounds a bit grandiose, like something out of a cyberpunk novel. But it's a specific industry term, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Stork uses the Gartner definition to ground the whole book, and I think it's important we start there. A citizen developer is defined as an employee who creates application capabilities for consumption by themselves or others.
Okay, so note what is not in that definition. It doesn't say someone with a computer science degree or...
Someone who works in the IT department.
Exactly. We're talking about the HR specialist, the supply chain manager, the accountant, the sales rep. People who sit in the business units, not the server room.
And Stork makes this critical distinction here that I think frames our whole conversation. Citizen developer is a persona, not a job title.
Right. You don't see job postings on LinkedIn for citizen developer?
No. You get hired to sell widgets or manage payroll. But you adopt the citizen developer persona to make selling widgets less painful. You put on that hat when you realize, I just can't keep doing this manually.
But this raises the immediate question, and I think this is where the tension is in most companies. Why? Why are we asking the accountant to build software? Isn't that explicitly what the IT department is paid to do?
In an ideal world, sure, yeah. But Stork highlights the reality of the IT bottleneck. We have to be realistic about resources. Professional developers are expensive, and they are scarce. They're focused on the massive structural things, the enterprise ERP system, the customer-facing app, the security infrastructure.
But in the skyscrapers, they don't have time to build your garden shed.
That's the perfect analogy. If you go to your IT department and say, hey, I need a button that automatically saves this specific type of invoice to this specific SharePoint folder, they aren't going to be mean about it, but they will prioritize it at, effectively 0. Or they'll put you on a backlog that is 6 to 12 months long.
And in 6 months, the whole process will have changed anyway, so the tool would be obsolete before it's even built.
Precisely. But there's a deeper reason Stork argues for the citizen developer, and it goes beyond just speed. It's about the translation gap.
Ah, the game of telephone.
Yes. Think about the traditional model. A business user has a problem. They explain it to a business analyst. The analyst writes up a requirements document. The developer reads the doc, which they might misunderstand, and then writes code.
And the developer doesn't know why that data column matters. To them, it's just a stream of text. They don't know that if the client is Acme Corp, it needs to be handled differently than if it's Beta Corp.
Right. Stork argues that the person with the problem is the best person to build the solution because they understand the context. The sales manager knows that if a deal is over $50,000, it needs the VP's approval. But if it's under $10,000, it just goes to finance. A developer needs that explained to them. The citizen developer lives it every single day.
So we have the motivation, speed, and accuracy. We have the persona, and now we need the weapon, and that's where Microsoft Power Automate comes in.
Formerly known as Microsoft Flow.
Which was a much catchier name, frankly. Flow just rolls off the tongue.
It was, But Power Automate fits the branding of the whole suite a little better. And Stork breaks this tool down in a way that's really accessible. It's a low-code, no-code platform.
Let's define that because no code often feels like a lie to people. There's
Yeah.
always some kind of logic involved.
There is logic, absolutely. But there isn't syntax. You aren't worrying about semicolons or declaring variables in a specific format or, compiling code. Think of it like digital Lego blocks. The core architecture is simple. You have a trigger and you have an action.
Cause and effect.
Right. The trigger is the event that wakes the robot up. When an email arrives, when a new row is added to Excel, when a file is modified in Dropbox.
And the action is what the robot does once it's awake.
Create a file, post a message to Teams, send an approval request, update a row in SQL.
Stork gives a really concrete example in the book involving sales data that I think clarifies this perfectly.
Oh yeah, the classic email attachment scenario. It's almost the hello world of Power Automate, the trigger. An email arrives in your Outlook with an Excel attachment containing this week's sales figures. The action. The flow automatically strips that attachment, opens it, reads the table inside, and adds those rows to a master database.
Zero human intervention.
And crucially, zero errors. Humans are terrible at copy-pasting. We get tired, we miss rows, we paste into the wrong column. The flow does it exactly the same way every single time, whether it's 9 a.m. on a Monday or midnight on a Friday.
Now, this brings us to my favorite insight from the source material. Stork uses this analogy in the preface about cookbooks versus cooking.
I love this distinction. It really cuts to the core of how to learn technology.
He says most technical guides are just recipe books. Here is exactly how to make chicken parmesan. Step 1, step 2, step 3.
Which is great if you want chicken parmesan exactly the way the author makes it. But what if you're allergic to chicken? Or what if you only have beef? Or you hate tomato sauce? If you only know the recipe, you're stuck. You don't know why you're adding the eggs or the breadcrumbs, so you can't swap them out.
And Stork's whole mission is to teach the reader how to cook.
Exactly. He wants you to understand the ingredients, the variables, the loops, the conditions, the JSON expressions. Because your business problem is never going to match the tutorial 100%. It's going to be messy. You need to know how to improvise.
That's empowering, but also a little intimidating, right? It suggests you need to understand the logic of programming, even if you aren't actually writing code.
You do. And Stork doesn't shy away from that at all. He talks about loops apply to each. He talks about branching logic. If this, then that, else this. You have to think like a programmer, specifically about logic and flow, even if you're just dragging and dropping boxes on a screen. Yeah.
Let's zoom out a bit. We've talked about the individual saving time, but why are organizations actually allowing this? I remember a time when IT locked everything down. The whole idea of shadow IT people building their own apps on the side was a nightmare scenario for a CIO.
It absolutely used to be. The fear was data governance. If Bob in accounting builds a critical app on his desktop and then Bob quits, the app just dies and the company loses data.
Or worse.
Or worse, Bob builds an automation that accidentally emails the entire confidential customer list to a vendor.
That is a legitimate fear.
It is. But the Power Platform, which Power Automate is a part of, changes the calculation because it's managed shadow IT. It lives in the company's cloud tenant. IT can see the flows. They can manage them. They can set policies on what connectors can be used.
So they can say, okay, you can connect Excel to Outlook, but you absolutely cannot connect Excel to your personal Twitter account.
Yeah. Exactly. They're called DLP data loss prevention policies. It gives IT the control they need to sleep at night while giving users the freedom they need to actually get work done. And the efficiency gains are just. They're too massive to ignore. The cost savings of not having to hire a developer for every little task is huge.
We mentioned connectors there. This is a huge part of the book's focus on the evolution of these tools. For the listeners who have been in the Microsoft ecosystem for a while, they might remember something called SharePoint Designer.
Ah, yes. The ghost of workflows past.
Stork spends some time burying this ghost, doesn't he?
He does. And look, SharePoint Designer, or SPD, it was the standard for a long time. But it had one fatal flaw. It lived on an island. It could only automate things inside SharePoint.
So if you wanted to talk to Salesforce or Google or even just a different Microsoft tool,
you were out of luck. You were writing custom code or buying really expensive third-party tools. Power Automate is the modern replacement, and the game changer is the connector ecosystem. Stork mentions over 600 connectors in the book.
It's probably closer to 1,000 by now.
Oh, it grows every single week. And they aren't just from Microsoft. It talks to Gmail, Dropbox, Salesforce, Adobe, Slack, generic HTTP APIs. It allows the citizen developer to glue together the entire digital stack, not just the Microsoft parts.
That connectivity is key. But Power Automate isn't working alone. Stork contextualizes it as part of the Power Platform. I think it's important we briefly introduce the rest of the band so listeners understand where Automate fits in.
Think of it like the Avengers. Power Automate is the engine. It moves the data, but it has no face. It runs in the background. You don't usually look at a flow while it's running.
So if I need a user interface, a screen.
That's Power Apps. If you need a form on a phone where a field technician takes a photo of a broken part and hits submit, that pretty screen is a Power App.
And when they hit submit?
Power Automate catches the ball, it takes the photo, saves it to a folder, and emails the supervisor.
Okay. And then we have Power BI?
That's the visualization layer. The brain, or maybe the eyes. Power Automate puts the data into a database, and Power BI turns it into a dashboard. How many broken parts did we have this month? Which region has the most? That kind of thing.
And then there's Power Pages and Power Virtual Agents.
Right. Power Pages is for external websites customer-facing, and Virtual Agents is for building chatbots. Hey, I need to reset my password, or where's the HR policy on leave?
The magic happens when you chain them all together.
Correct. And Stork introduces a very important, slightly more advanced concept here called solutions.
Solutions. It sounds generic, but it means something really specific in this context.
It does. Imagine you build that broken part app. You have the app, which is the screen, the flow, which is the logic, and the table, the data.
Yeah.
If you just copy the app to a new environment, it breaks because it can't find the flow. It's like moving a light switch but leaving the wiring behind in the other house.
That makes perfect sense.
So a solution is a wrapper. It's a suitcase. You pack the app, the flow, and the data definitions all into one box. Then you can move that entire box from your development environment to the production environment.
This feels like Stork is nudging the citizen developer toward more professional habits.
He is. He's saying, yes, you are a citizen developer, but you need to practice ALM application lifecycle management. You shouldn't be editing flows that are live and running the business. You edit in a sandbox, package it as a solution, and then you deploy it.
That's the difference between a hobbyist and a pro. Now, everything we've discussed so far assumes one thing, that the software you're trying to automate has a modern API. It has a digital door that Power Automate can walk through.
Right. But the corporate world is full of software that doesn't have doors. It has, moats and drawbridges and guards.
The zombie software. The legacy mainframe apps from 1998 that run on a blue screen with gray text. The stuff that runs the banking system and healthcare but hasn't been updated since the Clinton administration.
Stork dedicates a significant section to this because it's such a real problem. How do you automate a system that just refuses to talk to anyone?
And this is where we get into RPA, Robotic Process Automation, and specifically Power Automate Desktop.
This is a different beast entirely. Cloud flows, the API stuff we talked about, that all happens on the server. They are fast, invisible, and talk code to code. RPA happens on the screen.
It's mimicking the human user.
Literally. You train the bot, you say, move mouse to coordinates 200 by 400, click left button, wait 2 seconds, type password, press enter.
It's basically screen scraping.
It is, and Stork is very honest about this. It is fragile.
Because if I change my screen resolution, or if an update moves the submit button 3 pixels to the right,
The bot clicks empty space and the whole thing fails. Stork advice is always, always use cloud flows with APIs if you can. Only use RPA or desktop flows if you have absolutely no other choice.
but for those legacy apps, it's a lifesaver.
It's the only bridge we have.
Oh,
And he distinguishes between attended and unattended RPA here, which is a key logistical point.
what's the difference?
So attended is like having a digital assistant. You are sitting at your desk, you open the legacy app, and you trigger the bot. You watch it fill in the forms for you while you sip your coffee. You are attending it.
That's useful for, like, call center agents who have to update 5 systems at once while talking to a customer.
Exactly. Unattended is the night shift. It runs on a dedicated server in a dark room. No human is logged in. It wakes up at 3 a.m., processes 5,000 mainframe records, and goes back to sleep.
That sounds great, but I assume it's much harder to set up.
Much harder. You need special licensing, you need a dedicated machine, probably a virtual machine, and you have to handle errors really robustly because nobody is there to see if it crashes.
So the hierarchy of automation is cloud flows first because they are stable, attended RPA second as a helper, and unattended RPA third for heavy-duty background work.
That's the Stork methodology in a nutshell.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to circle back to the core philosophy here. We've talked about triggers and actions and solutions and bots, but fundamentally, Stork is talking about a shift in agency.
Agency is the perfect word. It's about democratization of technology.
For the longest time, if you had a brilliant idea to improve a process, but you couldn't code C# or Java, your idea just died on the vine. You were helpless.
You were dependent. You had to go beg for resources from someone else, explaining your vision to someone who didn't really care about it as much as you did.
This whole toolkit changes the complaint, "I wish there was an app for this," into the declaration, "You know what, I'll just build a flow for this."
And that changes the culture of a team. When people realize they have the power to fix their own frustrations, they stop complaining, they start innovating. They stop accepting busy work as some necessary evil and start seeing it as a problem to be solved.
It reminds me of the shift from, the printing press to the word processor.
Yeah.
Suddenly, everyone could publish. Now everyone can develop.
But remember Stork's warning. Learn to cook. Don't just follow the recipe. If you understand the logic, you can solve problems Stork never even imagined.
So